Welcome back to Talk Tickers. The show where we grab those earnings calls and really dig into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today we are looking at Axsome Therapeutics and their Q4 2024 report.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So I think maybe a good place to start would be just the big picture.
Okay.
How did they do?
Yeah, so overall, they had a fantastic year. Total revenue came in at $385.7 million for the full year.
Wow.
Which is an 88% increase from 2023.
Oh, so huge.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable growth, and it really shows that, they're executing well on their strategy.
Yeah, and that's a big jump. What's driving that?
Well, a big part of it is the success of their two key drugs, Avality and Sunosi.
Right, Avality for major depressive disorder and Sunosi for excessive daytime sleepiness.
Exactly. And, Avality is really becoming a star performer for them. It brought in $291.4 million in sales, which is a 124% increase year over year.
Yeah. I remember when that launched and everyone was talking about how it works so much faster than typical antidepressants.
Right. And it seems like that speed, that rapid onset of action is really resonating with both patients and doctors.
Yeah. Who wants to wait weeks to feel better, right?
Exactly. So that's definitely contributing to their success. And then, Sunosi's also doing well, brought in $94.3 million with a 26% growth. So
not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all. And, on top of that, they just got FDA approval for a brand new migraine treatment called Sombravo.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's big news, right?
Yeah, it's huge, especially for the millions of people who suffer from migraines.
Yeah, so many people struggle with migraines, and a lot of the current treatments aren't that effective, or they come with a lot of side effects.
Right, and that's where Sombravo comes in. It's specifically designed for acute migraine attacks in adults, and the clinical data looks really promising.
Yeah, I was reading about that. It seems like it's not just targeting pain relief, it's also addressing all those other awful symptoms that come with migraines, like the nausea and the sensitivity to light and sound.
Exactly. It's like they're going after the whole migraine experience, not just one aspect of it.
And I think they're planning a targeted launch focusing on headache specialists and neurologists.
Right. They're going right to the experts who see these patients day in and day out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Sombravo performs in the market. It definitely has the potential to be their next blockbuster.
Oh, absolutely. The migraine market is massive, and there's always a demand for new and better treatments, especially ones that offer a different approach.
Yeah, and speaking of different approaches, Axsome is doing some really interesting things with solrium fetal, which is the active ingredient in Sunosi.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
They're really trying to see how far they can take that molecule.
Yeah, they're exploring its use for all sorts of things like ADHD, MDD, and even binge eating disorder.
It's pretty ambitious.
It is ambitious.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin to unpack all that?
Well, I think the key is understanding how solrium fetal works in the brain. It basically increases the availability of two key neurotransmitters, dopamine and norepinephrine. And those chemicals play a role in a whole bunch of functions like attention, focus, mood, motivation.
So it's like a multi-purpose tool for the brain.
Yeah, in a way. And that's why they're looking at it for such a wide range of conditions.
So for ADHD, for example, the idea is that it could be an alternative to traditional stimulants, which can have some downsides like insomnia or appetite suppression.
Right. And, the market for ADHD medications is huge. So if solrium fetal proves to be safe and effective in that population, it could be a real game changer.
And then with MDD, they're focusing on patients who experience excessive daytime sleepiness, which is a common symptom of depression.
Yeah, so the thinking is that solrium fetal could address both the mood and the sleepiness issues, which could make it a really valuable treatment option.
And then there's binge eating disorder, which is often linked to imbalances in dopamine and those reward pathways in the brain.
Right, and so the hope is that solrium fetal could help regulate those pathways and potentially reduce those binge eating episodes.
It's really interesting to see them exploring all these different possibilities with solrium fetal.
It's a great example of how a company can take one molecule and really try to maximize its potential.
But of course, it's important to remember that these are still early days.
Absolutely. We need to wait for the results of those clinical trials before we get too carried away.
Right. It's all about the data, but the potential here is definitely exciting.
It is. And, while solrium fetal is generating a lot of buzz, let's not forget about their other pipeline candidate.
Oh, yeah, like AXS-05 for Alzheimer's disease agitation.
Exactly. That one's actually moving towards an NDA submission later this year based on some very positive results from phase 3 trials.
Oh, wow. So that's a big step.
Yeah, it is. You see, agitation is a really common and distressing symptom in Alzheimer's patients. It can manifest as restlessness, aggression, emotional distress, and it can make caregiving incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it's a really tough situation for both the patients and their families.
It is, and there are very limited treatment options available. So, a safe and effective therapy like AXS-05 could really make a difference in people's lives.
And what about AXS-12 for narcolepsy with cataplexy?
Right. So, narcolepsy is a sleep disorder that causes excessive daytime sleepiness, and cataplexy is a sudden loss of muscle control, often triggered by strong emotions.
So, like, you'd be laughing and suddenly collapse.
Exactly. It can be pretty scary and debilitating. And AXS-12 is designed to help regulate the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, which is involved in alertness and muscle control.
So basically, it's like giving the brain a boost to stay awake and keep those muscles in check.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the early data suggests that it could significantly reduce those cataplexy episodes.
Wow, that's really promising.
It is. And they're also working on a drug for fibromyalgia called AXS-14, and they just submitted their NDA for that one earlier this year.
Okay, so fibromyalgia is a chronic condition that causes widespread pain, fatigue, and other symptoms like sleep problems and mood disorders.
Right. And it's often misunderstood and misdiagnosed, which can be really frustrating for patients.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about AXS-13 is that it's not just targeting pain relief, it's also looking at improving functionality and reducing fatigue.
Exactly. They're trying to address multiple aspects of the condition, not just mask the symptoms.
It's impressive how diverse their pipeline is, that they're really covering a lot of ground in the CNS space.
They're definitely an ambitious company.
And, while there are always risks associated with drug development, it seems like they're doing all the right things to maximize their chances of success.
Yeah, I agree. They have a solid strategy in place.
So, we talk about how well they did financially, but I'm curious, what does their financial picture look like overall?
Well, they ended 2024 with $315.4 million in cash on hand.
Okay, that's pretty healthy.
Yep. Yeah, it is, especially for a company that's investing heavily in R&D. And, the really encouraging thing is that they're projecting to reach cash flow positivity pretty soon.
Oh, wow. So that means their revenue will be exceeding their expenses?
Exactly, which is a really important milestone for any company, especially in the biopharma world.
Yeah, it's a sign that they're becoming more mature and transitioning from a risky bet to a potentially more stable investment opportunity.
Right, and it gives them more financial flexibility to pursue their ambitious growth plans.
Okay, so before we move on, any key takeaways for our listeners, what should they be paying attention to when it comes to Axsome?
Well, first, I'd say pay attention to their revenue growth. It's impressive, and it's being driven by strong sales of Avality and Sunosi.
Yeah.
Second, keep an eye on the launch of Sombravo for acute migraine that could be a major catalyst for further growth.
Makes sense.
And finally, don't forget about their pipeline, especially those phase 3 trials for Solium Fetal. If those pan out, it could be a real game changer.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be excited about with Axsome. It seems like they're firing on all cylinders right now.
They are. They're definitely a company to watch.
All right, so before we dive into the specifics of their pipeline and explore some potential investment strategies, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sounds good. Welcome back to Talk Tickers.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about Axsome's pipeline, and they're doing some really interesting things with Solium Fetal.
Yeah, they're exploring its use for all sorts of things like ADHD, MDD, even binge eating disorder.
Yeah. There's a lot of potential for one drug.
It is, and I think to really understand it, you got to look at how Solium Fetal works in the brain.
Okay.
It increases these two key neurotransmitters, dopamine and norepinephrine, and they're involved in so many things: attention, focus, mood, motivation, and that's kind of why they're looking at it for so many different conditions.
So it's like a multi-purpose tool for the brain.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So like with ADHD, how would that work?
Well, for ADHD, the idea is it could be an alternative to the traditional stimulants,
Right.
which can have those downsides like insomnia, appetite suppression,
Yeah.
and ADHD meds. That's a huge market.
It is millions of people, kids and adults.
So if Solium Fetal is safe and effective there, that could be a big deal.
And then with MDD, how does that fit in?
Well, they're focusing on patients who have that excessive daytime sleepiness.
which is common with depression.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Solrium fetal could help with both the mood and the sleepiness.
So it's like a two birds, one stone kind of thing?
Exactly. And then there's binge eating disorder.
Right.
And that's links to those imbalances in dopamine and the reward pathways.
Right. So people struggle with these episodes of uncontrollable overeating.
Right. And then they often feel guilty and ashamed afterward.
Yeah.
So the hope is Solrium fetal can help regulate those reward pathways
Yeah.
and maybe reduce the binge eating episodes. But, it's early days.
Yeah.
Got to wait for those trials to finish up.
Right. We need the data.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of potential.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've talked about Solrium fetal.
Yeah.
They've got other drugs in the pipeline too.
Yeah, definitely.
What about AXS-05 for Alzheimer's disease agitation?
Yeah, that one is moving towards an NDA submission later this year.
Oh, wow.
They've got some really good results from those phase 3 trials.
That's great.
Agitation, it's really common in Alzheimer's patients, and it's distressing.
Yeah.
It can look like restlessness, aggression, emotional distress.
And it makes caregiving so much harder.
Right. Really puts a strain on families. There aren't a lot of good treatments for it.
Yeah.
Something like AXS-05 could be huge.
For sure. What about AXS-12 for narcolepsy with cataplexy?
Right. So narcolepsy, that's the excessive daytime sleepiness.
Right.
And cataplexy is when you have a sudden loss of muscle control,
Uh-huh.
and it's usually triggered by strong emotions.
So you could be like laughing and just collapse.
Yeah, exactly. It's scary. It can be really debilitating. AXS-12, it's supposed to help regulate that neurotransmitter norepinephrine
Okay.
that's involved in alertness and muscle control.
So like giving the brain a boost to stay awake and keep the muscles working.
Yeah, something like that. The early data is really good. It looks like it could reduce those cataplexy episodes.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's promising.
And then there's AXS-14 for fibromyalgia
Right, they just submitted the NDA for that one.
earlier this year.
Yeah, fibromyalgia, it's chronic pain fatigue, sleep problems, mood disorders, all sorts of things.
It's a tough one, and it's often misdiagnosed.
It is. A lot of people struggle to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
What's interesting about AXS-14 is that it might not just be about pain relief. Early data shows it could also improve functionality and reduce fatigue,
Wow.
which are big issues for a lot of fibromyalgia patients.
Yeah, they are. It's like they're trying to tackle the whole spectrum of symptoms.
Exactly. Trying to treat the whole person, not just one symptom.
Their pipeline is really impressive. They're doing so much in the CNS space.
They're definitely ambitious, and while there are always those risks with drug development, they seem to be doing everything right.
Yeah, maximizing their chances of success.
For sure.
So what are you most excited about? What are you keeping an eye on?
Honestly, I'm excited about all of it, but if I had to pick one, I'd say watch AXS-05 for Alzheimer's agitation.
Okay.
Big unmet need there, and the data looks really good.
It does. If it gets approved and works, like they hope it can make a huge difference for so many people.
Absolutely. And don't forget about Solrium fetal.
Right.
If it's effective for multiple conditions, that could be a real foundation for their portfolio.
Yeah, definitely a drug with a lot of potential. But, biopharma, it's risky.
It is very risky.
You never know how those trials are going to turn out or what the FDA is going to say.
Right.
So we got to be realistic.
Absolutely. But Axsome, they've got a lot going for them.
Yeah.
They've got a good management team, strong financial position, and a diverse pipeline.
Yeah,
That's a pretty powerful combination.
it is.
It's why I think they're a company worth paying attention to.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a bit and talk
Right.
about their financials. So we were talking about Axsome's financials, and they seem to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, they really are, especially for a company that's, still in that heavy investment phase of R&D.
Right. Still got to spend money to make money.
Yeah, but they're projecting to hit that cash flow positivity soon.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It is. It's a big milestone for any biopharma company. It means they're generating enough revenue to cover their expenses.
Right, without having to go out and raise more money.
Exactly. So it shows they're maturing, they're moving towards that sustainable profitability.
It's a good sign for investors.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of that financial strength comes from their existing drugs, Avality and Sunosi.
Right, those are the ones that are already on the market and bringing in the big bucks.
Exactly. Avality in particular, it's really looking like a blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, it's already doing really well.
It is, and it has the potential to, bring in over $1 billion in annual revenue.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. And with Sombravo just getting approved for acute migraine, that revenue stream is only going to get stronger.
Yeah, that's true. And then, of course, there's the whole pipeline.
Right. We can't forget about the pipeline.
I mean, if even one or two of those late-stage drugs for things like ADHD, MDD, binge eating disorder,
Yeah.
if those get approved and they're successful,
Their revenue could just explode.
yeah, it's exciting to think about
It
it.
is.
But got to be realistic.
Always got to be realistic.
Biopharma, it's risky.
Yeah, inherently risky.
Clinical trials could fail. FDA could say no side effects could pop up.
It happens all the time.
So what are some of the specific risks that investors should be thinking about with Axsome?
Well, I think one key risk is competition.
Oh,
You know, the market for CNS disorders, it's crowded.
yeah, there are a lot of companies vying for a piece of that pie.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So Axsome has to really differentiate their products.
Right. They got to show that their drugs are better or safer or easier to take or something like that.
Exactly. They have to stand out from the crowd.
Okay, what else?
Another risk is execution.
What do you mean by that?
Well, bringing a new drug to market, it's a complex process.
Yeah, lots of steps, lots of hurdles.
Exactly. You got to get it through clinical trials. You got to get the FDA to approve it. You got to manufacture it. You got to market it.
Right, and any missteps along the way could cause delays and cost a lot of money.
Yeah, execution is key.
Okay, makes sense. Anything else?
Well, there's also the risk of dependence on a small number of products.
Right, like they're relying heavily on Avality right now.
Exactly. And if something were to happen to those sales, like increased competition or pricing pressure,
Yeah,
it could really impact their overall revenue.
so diversification is important.
Yeah, having multiple products on the market spreads out the risk.
Okay, and then of course there's just the general uncertainty of drug development.
Right. Even the most promising drugs, they can fail in clinical trials.
Yeah, and that can really hurt a company's stock price.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a high-risk, high-reward industry.
It is. But, you know, with all that said, Axsome does have a lot going for it.
Yeah. What are some of the positives?
Well, they have a really experienced management team,
Okay,
a track record of success.
that's good.
They're in a strong financial position.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And they have that diverse pipeline of potential blockbusters.
Yeah, seems like they're checking all the boxes.
They are. And that's why I think, you know, they have the potential to be a major player in this space.
Yeah, it's definitely a company worth watching.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Axsome Therapeutics.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
We've covered their impressive financials, their promising pipeline, and of course, the risks and rewards of investing in this company.
Always got to consider both sides.
Absolutely. As always, this is not financial advice.
Right.
Do your own research. Talk to a financial advisor. Make informed decisions.
That's right.
And until next time, keep listening to Talk Tickers.
Stay curious.